shaky voice, butterflies in your stomach. Knees are weak and palms are sweaty. If you've ever been asked to stand in front of an audience of any size to deliver a speech, you may know those symptoms all too well. The fear of public speaking is more common than you think. People of all ages and occupations struggle with public speaking. 77% of the United States population feels anxiety. Dr. Megan Fisk is here today to help soul-preneurs build confidence, craft delicious messages, and deliver standing ovation-worthy speeches. She uses her 10 years of experience as a college professor and her intuition to demystify the speech crafting process for her clients so that they can build confidence, motivate audiences of all sizes with their message, and earn more revenue. Hello, hello. Welcome, Dr. Megan. Is that how you prefer to be addressed?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay,
Thank you so
perfect.
much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love the intro.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here because public speaking is definitely one of the areas that I always want to improve in. And so I love to hear it from a professional coach who knows what it's all about and see what tidbits you have to share with us so that we can share it with the world. So excited. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Dr. Megan?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, my name is Dr. Megan Fisk, and I am a public speaking coach. I particularly work with teachers, healers, and other leaders and entrepreneurs who want to improve their public speaking skills. So public speaking is something you have to do so much throughout your life, particularly as a business owner, or if you've got a message that you want to share with the world, you got to get out there and share it.
Yeah. So when did you realize that there was a need for public speaking coaches to just help others and just kind of what drove you to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do and I'm very passionate about this?
It's such a great question. So I was a communication professor, first at Arizona State University, and then I was actually in the U.S. We've got a program called Peace Corps here, and I was at a over in Kosovo, and I really thought oh, maybe college life, professor life, this is just what I'm going to do. But I was deeply unhappy with it in a lot of ways. There was just something that never quite felt right. I loved teaching, but I hated the research side of it. And how long it takes to publish something and then how few people read it. And you probably know that struggle as well. And so I was like, what do I want to do? And I heard one of my favorite personal development authors. Her name's Gabby Bernstein. And she had a little clip that, watching YouTube one day, and she mentioned that she had a public speaking coach before her first book launch that helped her really structure her message and stay on topic, because it's one thing to write a book, but then it's another thing to go and deliver it. And even though she's a speaker, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's a job in the world. I had friends that had gone in. There's a lot of public speaking training for like Fortune 500 companies or leadership development type seminars that some people go off to do. But that was really it. It was like maybe 2.5 years ago now. Yeah. And then I started my business, started coaching. I've got quite a few friends that are politicians. And then I was already really involved in like the public relations side of the university. So, it's not like I just woke up one day and was like, I want to be a public speaking.
Right.
I've been teaching the class for 10 years. But that's it in a nutshell.
So that's funny that you said that. Like, that's what inspired you, because one of the things that I'm a member of Toastmasters International, and one of the people who inspired me was actually when I was listening to a podcast, and the host was not the greatest, but the guest was phenomenal. And I was just like, who is this guy? His name's Tony Watley. He's a millionaire, and he wrote a book, and he just starts discussing his book. And she said, well, how did you prepare for the launch of your book? And one of the things he said as well was, I knew that this book was going to take off. So by knowing that this was going to take off, I knew I was going to be invited to podcasts. I was going to be interviewed, and I needed to know how to deliver my pitch well and execute it so that everybody knows exactly what my book is about and who I am, and that I mean business, and I'm serious. And so he joined Toastmasters Toastmasters. And I was like, what is that? And so I actually kind of like nonchalantly mentioned it to my husband, and he just said, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is. We use those, we use those trainings in the Army all the time. And I'm like, I was in the Army too. I don't remember hearing anything about that, but my husband went farther up the leadership chain than I ever did. And so he was very, very familiar with it. So I looked into it, I joined, and then I ended up joining, and I've been there for a year now. And it's been amazing, just, as a resource for me as a leader in healthcare, to be able to have that and feel more confident than my peers or people who are even more executive level than I am. And I'm just like, you know what, you should really come to Toastmasters with me and just learn how to drop some of those crutch words and everything. So
I love Toastmasters too. And it speaks to the power of public speaking. I mean,
yes.
Toastmasters has been around for over 100 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I do host something that's like, I call it a Toastmasters alternative, because a lot of my folks are more on like the mystical side and spiritual side. And Toastmasters is very dependent on the community in which you live. It's a little different now because of COVID, but I know sometimes people don't feel so comfortable. Like, I've got a crystal here talking about their crystals at Toastmasters with, someone that does sales or marketing and is like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. And I have to agree with that. I think at this point, I'm there because I'm loyal to the group and to the organization, but I do feel like I need to expand a little bit and take it to the next level and have somebody there at my side to really assist me to like, okay, all right, Jasmine, so what is your why? What is your message? What is your pitch? And like, I want to be able to deliver that better as a person. So overall, Dr. Megan, who are the types of clients that you've seen? I know you've mentioned like politicians, so go ahead and give us like the...
Yeah, Jasmine, it is one of those things where I go back and forth. Sometimes I'm like, the universe just sends me people and I go with it, but that is not a marketing strategy. So I end up working with some people are in corporate. I do next to no marketing. I work with a lot of technology company founders as well that are pitching for millions of dollars for their businesses. I actually have a client today. I'm sending her like all the good vibes. She's at this huge, I think there's like 1,000 people in the audience. She's chosen like one of 5 women in technology leaders. Like, it's a huge deal.
Wow.
I know. And I'm like so excited for her. So I'm like, I think it's like 6 hours away. Not that I'm counting down. But so I've got her on like one end, and then I've worked with tons of yoga teachers. I'm very passionate about helping folks that maybe are introverted or creatives that never really thought that they were going to be up in front of a group of people leading them in something. It's one thing when, you've been maybe a meditation teacher for years and you're ready to tell your story. That energy that you have to bring to it becomes very different. So quite a few in that realm, and then just a lot of authors as well. So mostly like nonfiction. You've got your memoir coming out, like the guy from Toastmasters you were speaking about. Like, you need to do some promotion around your book. You're going to be speaking a lot. And that sort of thing. So I do one-on-one coaching, particularly with like that group of people. And then if you've got a small business and you want to work on using public speaking as a marketing tool, I have called Soul Speakers Academy. And that's really where I teach the 5 speeches every entrepreneur needs. When you're chit-chatting, every time you have to do an introduction speech, like you introduce yourself all day, every day as a business owner, like you might as well get really good at it and drop in those little nuggets that people are going to be like, oh, wait, what was that? That's how it fits in with my life. And then, like, hosting webinars is a really essential part of a lot of people's sales funnels, particularly if you're launching like an online course and you just want to run it on repeat, knowing how to structure it and like do the pitch and the conclusion to drive traffic to the course. There's all different types of like persuasion techniques for that. So I'm very fortunate to have like the whole range. I feel like I have this job in the entire world because I listen to motivational speakers all day, every day. And I like wake up and I'm like, oh, this is my job.
That's awesome. So are you listening because you're seeking out different platforms and you're just listening to other people who are broadcasted somewhere? Or are you listening to, I guess, where are you finding your resource of people to listen to be inspired?
Yeah, I mean, they're my speakers, right?
Okay.
A lot of them they're all my clients
Yeah.
as
Okay.
I come on. I work with like 2 or 3 people a day most of the time,
Mhm.
and they're practicing their speeches with me, or
Yeah.
like last night we
Gotcha.
were practicing my one client's pitch for a couple hours, really like
Oh,
going
wow.
through it together, like, okay,
Yeah.
do this one. And then, if there's a transition that feels a little uncomfortable, what
Uh-huh.
thought patterns coming up for you, let's work through that.
Okay.
And especially just asking for money, I think a lot of women in particular have
Yeah.
trouble with. And it's such a shift if you go from like storytelling to, and if you want to learn more about my company, come on over and check out my website, or
Uh-huh.
drop your email address and I'll be sure to follow up with you. Sometimes your voice wavers there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get that little like, oh, and that breaks the connection with your audience.
Mhm.
The more you can do to practice
Mm.
that. So when it comes to like places I look though for speakers, really they're all around.
Yes. They
Like,
are. Yeah.
yeah, I am like obsessed with Amanda Gorman right now. I feel like
Okay.
most of the country, she was the inauguration poet.
Oh, yes, 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 yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard her speak on everything. Like every interview she's done since the inauguration a couple weeks ago, I've been like, wait, what now? Like I love the way she talks about words.
Yes, she was great. She was phenomenal. And so one of the keynote speakers that I've had recently at one of my conferences that I attended was Kendra Hall and the art of storytelling. And oh my goodness, like I was so impressed with her delivery, and then just how she was able to deliver it in a way that I wasn't feeling like I was being schooled about it. Like it was just amazing, and her story, it was her entire delivery and pitch was in a storytelling format, just like she's marketing, and I was just like, wow, you're pretty good, lady. So
Yeah,
uh,
I really love her book,
mhm.
and she has in it 3 stories that every entrepreneur should have, and I'm,
Uh-huh.
like, in 100% agreement with her. The first one is
Yeah.
the founder's story, like, why did you start your business? Right?
Okay.
Like, I think it's the question you kicked off the interview with too. You're
Yeah.
gonna tell that story so many times,
Yeah.
right? And you want a good story, one that,
Mhm.
people are going to latch onto and is going to be
Yeah.
memorable.
Right.
And then your client transformation story. How do you take clients from point A to point B?
Uh-huh.
And then that aha moment.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, wait, what happened? What was that light bulb?
Yes.
I highly recommend her book.
Yes,
She
yes.
is so good.
I didn't even look into it, but I'll definitely look into it and see. And yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
So Dr. Megan, did you always used to fear public speaking?
Yeah, it's one of those like serendipitous things. So
Mhm.
no one could understand anything I said until second grade, other than
Oh,
my mom and one of my brothers. I had a lot of speech problems.
okay.
And with it did come so much like anxiety that I really had to learn how to work with. And I
Okay.
credit my music teacher in grade school
Mm.
and junior high, and then going to church. And they were very supportive in like having kids get up and share and, talk in front
Mhm.
of people. But it still is like it's some sort of like fear that I have, or
Mhm.
just extra anxiety that I get when I'm like, "Ooh, am I going to, like, mess up that word?" Like,
Yeah.
the word curriculum, I
Uh-huh.
still mess up sometimes. Like, I still say it, but it's like it has too many C's and R's in it, so I always like lesson planning, but I was on, like, the curriculum development group. I used to have to say it
Okay.
all the time, and I was like, "Ugh."
Oh.
And yeah, so I get it. Like there's so many struggles that can come up when like, and then the vulnerability piece of it, of like being able to put your story forward and be like, oh, are people going to judge me? Like, is this too
Mhm.
shameful to talk about? Like, should I share this? Should I not? Like, all of those fears are so human and come
Yeah.
up for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think we have to talk about these things. But yeah, that's really like my story with public speaking fear. And
Yeah.
yeah, I always like it. There's this Elizabeth Gilbert quote. She wrote a
Okay.
book called Big Magic, where she talks about how creativity and fear are conjoined twins.
Mhm.
You can't have one without the other. And
Okay.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
It's like it's just so true in my life. Anything I've done that's been creative and courageous and
Mhm.
worthwhile comes with so much fear
Yes.
attached to it, right?
Mhm. Stepping outside your comfort zone. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, getting outside that
Yeah.
comfort zone, and growth is always on the other side of it.
Mhm.
And I'm really lead a dedicated life to growing as a person and
Mhm.
improving. And so I always remember that quote, and I'm like, yeah, no, if you're going to be creative
Mhm.
and live a very full life in that way that's outside
Yeah.
of your comfort zone,
Yeah.
you're going to have to make friends with your fear.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. Be besties. Be
Yeah,
besties. But take over.
yeah, you don't let it. She has this great analogy. When she's like, you don't let it drive the car. Like creativity drives the car, but fear gets to sit in the back seat and be really
Mhm.
nervous. And you sure you want to do this? And it's like, yeah, okay. Like we'll be fine. We're still
Okay.
going to do this.
Yes, I love that. I love that that visual there. So that's
Yeah.
perfect. So one of the things that you had mentioned during our meet and greet was the choose again method to overcome public speaking fear. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the choose again method is? That's very unique.
Yeah, I love it. Like, and you can really use it for any fear, but we
Mhm.
can stick to public speaking fear since that's what I'm all about.
Yeah.
So it's recognizing and bringing awareness first to the thoughts that are coming up for you.
Mhm.
So it might be that one that comes up for a lot of my clients is, "Ooh, people are going to really judge me
Mhm.
like, negatively if I share
Mm.
this story, and maybe they're not going to love me," right?
Mhm.
Like as deep seated, and it kind of cuts in, and then you're like, "Ooh, like I can't be my full expression of myself because
Mhm.
no one's going to like it or love it or that sort of thing." And you can see like, oh, that thought isn't serving me, right? Like
Mhm.
our thoughts dictate our emotions. Our emotions lead us to take actions. Those
Mhm.
actions produce experiences. Those
Mhm.
experiences reinforce our beliefs.
Mhm.
Right? And so that it's such a cycle and interconnected. And so you have to step in and say, what thought or belief is going to serve me better?
Yeah,
Right. And that's all what She's Again method is about. And Gabby Bernstein, again, like really coined it. So I like to make sure
I
I
love it.
put that out there. Yeah. She has a whole book called Super Attractor on it.
Yeah.
And so you start to bring awareness to it, and you realize really identifying what emotion it is. Uh,
Mhm.
right. Because we want to choose joy. Like, I think the whole purpose of life is the expansion of joy.
Yes.
It's the whole, and when you're in that joyful gratitude space of like, oh, nothing's going to rain on my parade. Like,
Mhm.
whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
That's when fear doesn't stand a chance,
Mhm.
right? You're not going to be too scared. And so, what emotion is that thought producing? And really trying to label it. So
Mm.
maybe it's like a shame or a grief, and you're like, that's not what I want. Like,
Right.
I like to use this example that I think, and I feel like so many people relate to. So imagine that you had, let's say, a teacher in high school that
Uh-huh.
said, and you failed a report in your English class. And so ever since then, you've been saying to yourself, I'm really bad at public speaking.
Mhm.
This isn't something that I'm great at.
Mhm.
And you're like, So you get curious. You're like, you go back, you identify, like, okay, this is like where this belief is coming from.
Mhm.
And then it's like, yeah, why did I fail that report? And then
Yeah.
you come to realize that you had absolutely no interest in William Faulkner. Like, the book just wasn't
Yeah.
interesting, you couldn't connect with it, so you
Yeah.
really didn't put that much time and effort into the presentation, and so, of course, you got a bad grade on it, and
Mhm.
that's not a reflection of you as a person, and plus you're not the same person as you were when you were, like, 14 or 15 when it happened, right?
Mhm.
And so you're like, "Okay, I see where this experience is coming up and, like, why this belief has become," and then you just simply choose again.
Yeah.
Decide for yourself what belief that you want to have about
Mhm.
public speaking or about whatever spot you want to, like, thing you want to step out of your comfort zone for.
Yep. Yeah.
And so for public speaking, there's a couple thoughts that I really like. Is one is like, I'm getting better
Uh-huh.
every time I get better,
Yep.
or my message is worth sharing.
Uh-huh.
I like that thought a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I was going to say I had another one the other day, like, um, people are investing in me and
Right.
in the long run, like I know, ooh, this one's really important. Like, I know what's best for me,
Mhm.
right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
that one is tricky. So you come up with like, okay, what is it? And you have to really believe it too. Like that's
Mhm.
the other thing. It's one
Right.
thing to think, oh, I'm the best public speaker in the entire world. If you don't really think that one, it's not going to really sink in and have
Yeah,
like the resonance that you want it to. But
exactly.
you can choose a better thought than like this. If I share this story, no one's going to love me.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like
Yeah.
if I share this story, I'm going to help one person see themselves
Right.
differently.
Yes.
And that might outweigh it for you, right?
Mhm.
So you choose again, you choose that belief.
Mhm.
And then every time your mind starts to wander to,
Yeah.
the negative spiral stuff, you take a deep breath and you recenter back to the thought that you would rather be thinking.
Mhm.
And over time, it really reinforces um, your belief in it because, like I said at the beginning, our beliefs are dictate our thoughts, which dictate our
Mhm.
emotions, which lead to actions, which then have experiences that
Yeah.
reinforce the beliefs again. And so you're constantly going in that circle. And so if you can have a different thought, I love
Yeah.
like thought interruption because it's so
Right.
hard to change. Part of my PhD was in health communication. So I think
Uh-huh.
I relate to this. Like there's so many ways we try to change like public health behavior, like getting
Mhm.
people to stop smoking and the interventions that we run
Yeah.
um, that are really focused on getting them to take different actions.
Mhm.
Where the power comes in, and I think like it's a really ripe field for researchers to look more into, is how do we actually change that thought
Mhm.
that people are
Mhm.
having? Like, how would that look? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's-
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. So what are some of the first steps that we can take to get more comfortable? What are some things that you would suggest as our beginning for anybody who's just starting out or for anybody who's been in it for a while? I think there would be different varying advices there, but what would you say?
yeah, and I think it depends. Like, step one is really identifying what that goal is for you.
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
it that you wanna build confidence in your everyday life? So a lot
Yeah.
of my clients that, are more in corporate settings,
Yeah.
they'll come and tell me, "There's this one jerk in the IT department usually that just makes me feel like an idiot at meetings, and I need to be faster in my replies. I don't feel like I'm you know, communicating my best self and
Mhm.
my ideas clearly. Like that's a very different goal than in the next 2 years, I want to give a TED talk.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so really getting clear because my advice is going to be different for those. So if
Yeah.
you're more on, I want to just become a better communicator so I can get promoted at work, so I can
Mhm.
have these deeper relationships even then it's really about practicing
Right.
in the setting, right? And
Yeah.
coming up. So I love rhetoric is the art of all available means of persuasion.
Mhm.
In every communication situation, there are thousands of options that
Mhm.
exist.
Yeah.
And so starting to analyze like what alternative could I be using in this situation? And that is when it becomes really helpful to work with a coach and identify like, oh, wait. So if someone puts me on the spot
Mhm.
and asks me a question, like there's a way of saying, actually, I'm not quite certain of the answer in this moment, but I'm going to get back to you.
Yep.
And then when you get back to them, having like the perfect response back, right?
Mhm.
And knowing that
Mhm.
that's totally fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there with, your mouth on the conference room table, like, I don't know. Um,
Right.
right. And so it's figuring out, okay, what options do exist?
Mhm.
How can I set up the conversation in a way
Yes.
that is going to benefit me?
Right. Yeah.
Um, on the flip side, if you're like, I want to give a TED talk in 2 years,
Uh-huh.
then it is doing podcasts like this. It is getting out there and really sharing your story in new settings that
Uh-huh.
get you exposure.
Yeah.
And two, are helping you. Like every time I do a podcast interview, I get so many new ideas and so
Yeah.
many like new little takes. I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't phrased it quite that way before.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so it's really like saying yes to every speaking opportunity you can
Okay.
take.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So let's take it virtual now. We are now in a world of pandemic and everything's virtual. So when I started Toastmasters, things were live and in person. And we had the perks of being able to read body language, to see how your audience is truly reacting to what you have to say, see if they're really like captivated or if they're just like bored to death. And then I think in the virtual setting, it just like, put a damper on all of that because you don't see it as well. And so, two parts to this question, Dr. Megan, is one, as a presenter, what can you do to, I guess, still feel just as comfortable in a virtual setting? And then two, how do you assess like the room? How do you read your audience's vibe?
Yeah, this is something that every one of my clients asks me, and I go
Yeah.
live 2 times a week. I have a Facebook group and talk
Mm,
about it so much because
yeah.
it is one of the most intimidating things. So
Mhm.
I'm going to mess up the study, but there's this nonverbal communication study where they had an interviewer. There was like a control group where it was like a normal interviewer, and then the other one is someone who has no facial expressions at all. And the
Mhm.
amount of public speaking anxiety people feel when they get no nonverbal feedback is so much higher.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. Uh-huh.
yeah. So it's a super intimidating situation. So let's all just acknowledge that. And that is my number one tip, is to acknowledge that to your audience
Okay.
and say, if we were in the room right now, I'd ask you all to raise your hands. But obviously, we're virtual. I can't see you all. But what I
Yeah.
want you to do is drop a 1 in the comments if this is resonating with you, or
Ah,
like
yes.
get that engagement and just be very
Perfect.
direct and ask for it. Say,
Uh-huh.
and beyond even like, I do like, ask me questions. Feel free to use the chat. Like, I'll be
Yeah.
checking it throughout my presentation.
Uh-huh.
But you also can make it a lot easier for people to engage. So we're all
Yeah.
like multitasking a lot. And
Yeah.
I know there's times I'm listening to people and I'm like, ooh, I can't really, type in the full paragraph that I would like to right now. But if we
Uh-huh.
say, on a scale from 1 to 10, tell me how much you love whatever.
Uh-huh.
That's going to give you that feedback to help you guide the conversation. So
Okay.
if you have that captive audience, ask for that feedback
Yeah.
couple different ways. I know sometimes on the virtual presentation platforms, they have some fun emojis. Like on Zoom,
Mhm.
even you can do like the clap one or that sort of thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
All of that is helpful.
Yeah.
But when that doesn't exist, right?
Right.
There are so many times that I have done Facebook Lives and there's no one watching.
It
Like,
happens. It
it
happens.
totally happens. It's totally
Yeah.
normal. And you want to still do them because it builds up like your inventory of videos. Like,
Mhm.
I've been going live twice a week for over a year now. So I have hundreds of videos
Mhm.
direct people to as resources and that sort of thing. So a couple tips there is first, just imagine you're talking to your best friend. So you can
Yeah.
even put pictures up behind your webcam
Mhm.
to one, remind you to make eye contact with your webcam because I
Uh-huh.
was down here looking at my screen all day.
Yeah.
It's not as engaging. Like,
Yeah.
I get though that then you're looking out into the abyss, but I really like to just center myself beforehand and either imagine that I'm talking to my best friend or
Mhm.
I'm talking to my favorite clients or
Mhm.
my dream client, like that one person that I know my program
Yeah.
is right for, right?
Right.
And really using the power of your imagination there.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
if you had the most sympathetic audience ever, just imagine they're on the other side of the camera. Uh, my other thing about lives, though, that I feel like people don't talk about as much is
Mhm.
talk to the replay audience at the beginning. So if you're
Mhm.
doing Facebook Live, it's going to take a couple minutes. If you go live in the platform itself, it has
Mhm.
a lag to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's a mess. That's why I like StreamYard so well, which
Yeah.
is what we're using. I highly recommend it because you can do the fun intro and then actually be live when you want to be live. But if you're going just live in Facebook, the first things out of your mouth is actually welcoming the replay audience.
Okay.
Have like Toastmasters and traditional public speaking advice is going to say always start with your attention getter.
Yeah.
I love a good attention getter.
Yeah.
Um, but in the Facebook Live world.
Yeah, it's 2021.
2021, not 1919.
Yeah.
They're going to be people that watch it after the fact and be like,
Mhm.
hey, thank you so much for watching today. As you're watching the replay, do a little hashtag replay. Here's what we've got going on.
Mhm.
Welcomes them and sets the tone for it. You can
Mhm.
also do your call to action right at the top too.
Yeah.
If someone's only going to watch 30 seconds, 60 seconds of it, you want to make sure that you've got it in there. Like, don't just be like, oh, buy my program.
Mhm.
Right. But we're going to be excited about, oh, I've got, here's a couple announcements right off the top before we dive into today's live topic.
Yeah.
Find that, right?
Okay.
And you're still getting the eyeballs and accomplishing
Mhm.
the goal for speaking.
Wow. Well, thank you for tapping into the Facebook Live world, because I think that is incredibly important. Anybody who's doing anything, if you're trying to promote what you're selling or what you're offering, one of the best ways to do it is to go live. I think. I feel like I'm not quite sure what the algorithm does or says, but I feel like the algorithms for lives are much more, it presents more than if I were to just do a video and then post a video. Whereas, like you don't see as many views. And so I do agree. And I appreciate the call to action at the beginning, because I have that awkward moment where when I go live and I'm like, are we live yet? Are we live yet? Oh, okay, here we go. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's
No,
that silly.
that's why I like going live on StreamYard. I'll do like a Canvas slide and then wait like 2 or 3 seconds and then it like bring myself in.
Yeah, it is so much nicer, and being able to like have it set up and having like an organization to it. But I love the numbers thing to get people to be engaged during a virtual meeting, and I really appreciate that. And that just triggered a memory. Like when I sat in it was a trading call that we did one time, and the speaker was super pumped and he was super hyped, and he was like, all right, if you hear me and if you resonate with this, give me a 777 in the chat now. And I'm like, oh, okay, 777, I can do that. Like I don't have to speak up, I don't have to unmute myself or go put my camera on. Let me just 777 right there. And that's so true. Like that's how I felt. Like it was such an easy, like, yeah, I could do that.
And gives the speaker then all that positive energy that they
Yeah.
get in the
Yes.
room,
Yes.
because they're like, okay, people are listening, like
Yeah.
they're resonating with it. That made me think of something else though, which is your job as a speaker is to make it easy for your audience to understand. None of the speaking that you do is really about you. Let me say that again, because I know you're like, wait, what? None of the speaking that you do is about you.
Yes.
It's always about your audience.
Yes.
And you want it to be super easy. And so sometimes, like, I know even for myself, I'm like, oh, like I want to talk about demystifying intuition and like use all of this flowery language. But that might not land well with your audience. Like
Right.
sometimes it's cool, but we're not like
Yeah.
Gorman and the inaugural poet.
Right.
Like when you're teaching something, you want to use that concrete language. You want to use, first, second, third, an easy layout to follow. Because if your audience walks away and they have no idea what your speech was about, you failed. Like that wasn't a good speech then. And so
Exactly.
thinking through like, how can I make this easier for my audience?
Yeah.
Is always like a question I think of.
Yes. Yeah.
And especially when it comes to engagement is what made me think of this.
Right.
Like saying, yeah, drop in 777 in the comments. So easy for your audience to do rather than, so tell me your life story or tell me the number one struggle you're having in your business right now. And then you're like, yeah, what is my number one thing?
Right. Yeah. And that is, it's so true. Like one of my episodes was about just knowing your audience and being able to make sure that before you prepare whatever speech or whatever pitch you need to do, know who your audience is. So as a nurse and as a pediatric nurse, I have to know that when I'm speaking to my pediatric patient, I will speak to a 5-year-old far differently from a 17-year-old. For a 17-year-old, I may speak to them like I would their parents. I would use very simple terms, non-medical terms that they would understand, but I will still speak to them like an adult. Whereas a 5-year-old, if I'm telling you I am drawing your blood, you will visually think I am drawing blood, and so it's like, it was one of the things that we learned as pediatric nurses from our child life specialists, who are the ones who interact with the children and make sure they're comfortable in a pediatric setting, is to speak to children in a language they understand, and if we're telling them certain things, they will hear it as it is, and they don't understand drawing your blood means to pull lab or to take lab from the patient, as opposed to physically sitting down and doing artwork. So,
That's such a great one.
so
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that for sure.
But yeah, and then so I said, if you're entering a room full of executives, how will you speak to them, as opposed to entering a room and doing a parent education? Very, very different language, very different formality. You want to be more formal with the executives, but you want to be more understanding and more approachable with the parents. And so many different ways that you have to change and shift your style, even just, within, it might be the exact same education that I'm presenting to the executives as a pitch of what I would like to start doing, a program that I would like to start at the hospital. But then here I am presenting the program to the parents, and I have to speak to them in a totally different way and style. Yeah.
It's so true. And I know sometimes people think, well, how much do I really have to change? Like, I'm just me.
Right.
And I'm going to say what I'm going to say. But it's so important to tailor it to your audience and to think through, like, okay, what example is going to resonate with my audience?
Yeah.
Because communication is very goal directive, right? Especially if you're a business owner. You're not communicating just to communicate. Or if you're in a work setting, you're communicating to get something done.
Yeah.
If you're communicating to either get people on your team, there's 3 types, really. There's informative, persuasive, and inspirational. Like the 3 types of speech is the 3 ways we communicate. And we, I think, lose track of that sometimes, especially if you're like a solo, like one person business owner, and you're like, oh, what do I want to do? You've got to think through, like, oh, wait, what? And meet your audience where they're at too.
Right. Yeah. Right?
That's why I love your pediatric
Thank you.
example, because it's like, the kids are thinking you're sitting there about to color with them, and you pull out this giant needle.
Exactly. That's kind of scary. That's yeah. Yep. All right. So Dr. Megan, so what does spirituality have to do with public speaking?
Oh, I love this question so much, because it's one of the, like, way back in ancient Greece, like the whole purpose, and there was this giant debate between Socrates and the sophists about the purpose of communication. How do you seek the truth, like truth with a capital T? And the sophists were like kind of the modern day lawyers, like the ancient lawyers back in Greece. And they're like, oh no, like you can use it to argue your case. Like it doesn't matter if it's the truth, truth with a little case T, like my truth's relative. Like Gorgias is like the biggest sophist of all times. And I feel like would have loved the fake news situation in our modern landscape, because he would be like, this is communication. Like, a jerk, he built a gold statue of himself. He made tons of money. But then you've got Socrates, who was like, I actually don't think we should earn money for teaching communication skills. Like it's a fundamental part of the human experience, the truth, to find out where we are. And so that's really set the stage for so much of the modern spiritual communication debate, like communication, communion, they come from the same word. Like fast forward years, and St. Augustine was really like this next generation of like Socratic method, like we're going to use rhetoric to get closer to God. And we're going to use communication to go out and recruit more people, Catholicism, and really took it to that next level. And so if you look at a lot of old school communication, it's all like based on how do we persuade people of the truth? How do we tell people about God and my God, not your God, right? And that's formed. It wasn't until World War II when they started to really dive deep into studying propaganda
Mhm.
that it became more of a social science. And so
Mm.
the history of communication and spirituality and how it ties into public speaking is at the very core of
Yeah.
who we are and of every scientific revolution we've had.
Uh-huh.
And it makes me so happy. I'm all like,
Yeah.
oh, right. And so then how does it apply to our everyday lives? Well,
Right.
how do we communicate with ourselves?
Mhm.
How do we communicate with whatever higher power we believe in? Do we think that we can live a life in communion with
Mhm.
that higher power and constantly talking to it? I'm fascinated by self communication. So earlier, when we were talking about
Mhm.
the choose again method and
Mhm.
how we can be in dialogue with our fear. Like, I
Okay.
think that is so cool.
Yeah.
Like, and when you get enormously curious about how your own like thought patterns work, uh,
Mhm.
and how the stories that you've been told about how society works,
Yeah.
and get and just question those and be like, is
Yeah.
this really what I believe, or is this just like an inkling of what I believe?
Right.
And like the thing for me, so I was raised very like conservative Mormon, and most of my family still practices, but
Okay.
not like the polygamist Mormons, but like the everyday Mitt Romney type Mormons.
Okay.
And I had this really early experience. I was like 14 and in charge of like the girls' youth, like we planned activities and
Mm.
that sort of thing.
Okay.
But I was speaking at the conference in front of a couple hundred other teenagers about, how much I just loved God and how we were
Mhm.
planting these seeds for future generations. And it was the first time that I felt like that full rush of
Mhm.
tingliness throughout my body of that. Have you had that experience?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're just so connected to the audience.
Mhm.
You're like they're hanging on your every word. I always think of the moment in Harry Potter. I think it's the sixth one, and he's in Slughorn's office, and there's the time turner, the
Uh-huh.
time hourglass. There we
Yes.
go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, if the conversation is super important, time's going slower. If
Uh-huh.
it's not
Huh.
important, it's going really fast. And I'm always like, yeah, that's how that moment felt. Is like
Mhm.
drops of sand just going down.
Yeah.
That to me is that moment when you're so connected, when you've built that energetic space
Uh-huh.
with your audience, that you're fully in communion with them,
Mhm.
the root of communication. And
Yeah.
I think that's what Socrates is teaching. That's what Augustine was looking for too, is just you're being that true, authentic self and
Mhm.
connected with your audience.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite feeling to get to
Yeah.
when you're giving a speech, because then you're not worried about your public speaking fear.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So please explain to me, because this was in one of your bio information, 3 ways to begin healing your throat chakra so that you can speak with clarity and confidence. I am very intrigued. I have a 15-year-old who is super into metaphysical things right now, and so I'm learning a lot about crystals and chakras and burning sage.
I love it. Yeah, so chakras are 7 traditionally we think of them as 7. There's some
Mhm.
debate. Sometimes people say 9 and you've got all of these little like mini chakras.
Mhm.
But there's 7 energetic centers throughout your body, and
Okay.
they're typically represented either as like, lotus flowers like the one behind me,
Mhm.
like these types of things, or
Mhm.
spinning wheels.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
what's fascinating is if you look at how like your nervous system is modeled in your body, there's different
Mhm.
clusters of nerves. So the chakras roughly match up with your
Mhm.
actual physical nervous system, which is
Okay.
interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm always on the pragmatic mood side. So
Uh-huh.
like if you want it from a science perspective, we can talk about that, or the metaphysical side is super fun too. And so
Mhm.
your throat chakra is your 5th one. Your heart
Mhm.
is the one in the middle. And then
Mhm.
working down from it, you've got your solar plex chakra, which is all about like power, like, and self-confidence. And so
Mhm.
I always like to start with your solar plex chakra, because if you've ever felt the butterflies in your stomach feeling,
Mhm.
one way of interpreting that is just that your solar plex chakra is producing extra energy to help you do better with your speech.
Okay.
And isn't that so much more fun?
Yeah.
Like, I've got these butterflies in my stomach and I don't like it and I want to get rid of them. And it's like, oh, wait, actually, I don't have to get rid of them.
Uh-huh.
What I like to do is use that sensation, like use that, okay, and my heart's like beating in my stomach, and
Mhm.
start to work it up into your heart space so that you can fully express yourself. And when you think about it from a body language perspective, you're like, okay, I'm opening up. No one wants to watch like a closed speaker, right? You're like protecting your heart and like,
Mhm.
I don't want to talk. But if you're more open, people are going to respond better to you. And so
Okay.
you're working it up. And then your throat chakra is really that center of creativity and communication.
Mhm.
And you can work the sensation up and out and connect more deeply with your audience's
Mhm.
theory on it. But when it comes to healing your throat chakra, what happens for a lot of people is they feel like their throat's closing in on itself
Mhm.
when they're giving a speech, and like
Okay.
they're just so physically uncomfortable with it. And so
Yeah.
to start to really work through that, you want to do a lot of meditation and visualization practices far
Mhm.
in advance of your public speaking uh,
Yeah.
occasion. So
Okay.
what this looks like is, one might be visualizing your dream speaking event. So we'll
Okay.
go back to, if you want to be on the TED stage,
Mhm.
working with how you want to feel after you gave that TED talk. The
Mhm.
audience is standing, applause is happening,
Yeah.
and you're just like, oh, it was amazing,
Yeah.
right? Like you're standing in that moment. Start to use that feeling and let it wash over you
Right.
every day in your visualization practice. And
Okay.
it's going to help you remove any of that tension in your body. The second
Mhm.
one, just to put a pin in it, is
Mhm.
really relabeling any sort of anxiety or nervousness. Like, we're the ones that have made those negative.
Mhm.
Like, you're not really going to die from butterflies in your stomach.
Yeah.
So what starting to look at it and reframe
Okay.
it as extra energy that's
Yes.
there to help you, not hurt you, is going to go a long ways and make
Right.
you feel more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then really having a movement practice. So emotion is energy in motion. And
Mhm.
so you've got to move it out of your body. If you go on YouTube, there's tons of like throat chakra yoga sequences.
Mhm.
And it's really a lot of like upper body stretching.
Mhm.
And so if you find yourself struggling with public speaking, you might really want to try doing some more of these yoga stretches.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So taking it just one step back, when you said to give it a, because we are the ones who are labeling it with the negative connotation, right? And so what I'm hearing is it triggered this. Okay, so instead of saying I'm nervous, I have butterflies, you can say I'm excited, and
Mhm.
so just changing that word, even though it still has the same physiological effect on your body, whatever it may be, say, instead of saying I'm nervous or I'm scared or I don't want to mess up, then you can just say I'm excited. Similar, exact same physiologic, your body's doing the same thing no matter what. Whether you're excited because you have butterflies because you're excited or butterflies because you're nervous, it's still the same reaction. Let's call it something different.
Yes, and I think that shows that you're passionate about the topic. So,
Mhm.
back when I was in high school, I was also on the dance team, and I remember and I did dance a lot growing up,
Mhm.
and I remember that first football season, like, there was something about being in the middle of the field with the bright lights on. I would
Yeah.
be so nervous, right? So much, like, energy coursing through my body, about it. But then fast forward by my junior year of high school, I was like, "Oh, I've gotta go to the football game in a couple hours and do this
Mhm.
dance thing," because I didn't like, there was all of these other things that it just wasn't lighting me up inside anymore. I wasn't as
Mhm.
passionate about it. And so when I like have gone through and like thought through it, I'm like, yeah, no, it's because I lost that passion. I lost that drive. And
Mhm.
your body isn't having that physiological response of producing the extra energy for something, that to me is a telltale sign that maybe it's not what I want to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I look at it as such a good thing. Like when I get a little like excited, and because I've done so many things in my life at this point that
Yeah.
I'm always like, is this going to like excite me? Like, am
Yeah.
I going to get that little jolt and like step outside of my comfort zone
Right.
with this? Like, yeah, like that is my number one indicator.
Yeah.
I want to be doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. There you go. All right. So what goals do you have moving forward? What are some of your upcoming fun, exciting, jolting things that you have on your agenda?
Yeah, well, from a business perspective, in 2021, I've set the goal to work with 78 soul speakers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. And
Huh.
the impact of it is what gets me super excited, because most of my speakers speak to about 1,000 people a month between like their Facebook following and podcasts that they're on and that sort of thing. And so that gets us an impact of over 1 million people.
Okay. Wow.
And that's why I love and like I love what I do so much, is because I know I can have an impact, but then I get to help all of these other people have even bigger of an impact and
Yeah.
more people. So that's my
Wow.
goal. And then I really want to do yoga teacher training. I've been a
Yes.
yoga student for over 10 years now.
There you go.
And I
It's a lot of hours.
it is, but I incorporate it so much into my work. I'd really like to lately, like I've been doing a lot with like the meditation and visualization components, and I'm like, how cool would it be to do like some sort of meditations for public speaking anxiety thing? But I don't feel like I'm quite ready yet. So I feel like yoga teacher training would be super fun.
There you go. Yeah, no, I've been looking into that as well. I have a friend who's a yoga instructor back home in Maryland, and she had mentioned, like she had put out there that they were doing a virtual teacher certification course workshop. And so I was like, oh, virtual, that I can dedicate time to. I don't have to drive anywhere. There's no traffic, so the hour or two that I'm doing it, each segment is really truly just an hour or two. It's not the additional 4 or 5 hours because I'm now having to drive there. So I'm like, I think I can do that.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. I know. So 2020 was supposed to go very different for me, as I'm sure many people have anticipated.
Yes.
I was going to do one in person in Thailand.
Oh, wow.
Like I finished right at Thanksgiving. So I think it started in early October.
Yeah.
But, didn't work out. And so I think for me, I have like this vision of like being somewhere tropical and doing like the full immersion experience.
Yeah.
Quite let it go yet.
Yeah. No, don't. That sounds amazing. I would have never thought to even look into something like that, but that sounds really cool. And probably, really, to be very honest, the same price point by the time you fly there and spend time there, just because of the price difference between that and, US dollars. So I like that. I like that. All right. So if you had a billboard, what would it say?
Your speech will change the world. For sure.
Yeah.
Like I want everyone to really know the impact of their story.
Yes. Yes.
Like and especially the ones that scare you a little bit, the ones that create all that energy in your body. Those are the stories that need to be told. And change happens on an individual level.
Exactly.
Like much as like I've studied a lot of change management theories in my life. And if you want a better and more equitable world, you have to get out there and tell your story and tell why it's so important to you to do that in as many public forums as you can. So will change the world.
I love it.
Sharing.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Is there something that we haven't had a chance to discuss yet that I didn't ask that you would like to mention?
Oh, that's such a great question. I mean, we've talked about so many things. I think the only last like public speaking tip I have is that we get so caught up in what I'd call like the style of speaking, how like I think you even mentioned it at one point about Toastmasters, like getting rid of filler words or oh, maybe my hand movements are messed up. All of that is just window dressing. If you're telling your authentic story, like I was just talking about, no one's focused on what your hands are doing or how many ums you're saying. Like, don't let that like those thoughts stand in the way of getting your message out there. Like a lot of people come to me and that's their first thing is like, my body language, like it has problems or X, Y, and Z. And it's like, that's such an easy fix.
Mhm.
Right? Like the more important thing is, are you telling that story that is going to change the world? Like,
Mhm.
are you getting it out there and getting it to the people that most need it? And then we can change the decoration up a little. Like that's
Okay.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Love it, love it. Perfect. All right, so where can Comfort Kills followers find you?
Oh, thanks. You can check out my website. It's drmeganfisk.com. On it, I've got a freebie for your core message, which is really that one truth, that one thing that that I love the billboard question because that
Mhm.
is like your core message. That's what
Yes.
represents you. And I've got a ton of journaling prompts and
Yeah.
examples of different people's core messages to help you
Mhm.
unlock it.
Yes.
Because if you're a business owner, your core message is really the key that is going to open the rest of your business messaging up.
Mhm, mhm.
So check that out. And
Yes.
then of course, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the places.
Yep. Yep. So if they go to drmeganfisk.com, which is on the ticker below, they'll be able to find all those different funneling links to your different areas as well. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning and just like sharing a wealth of knowledge with us. And I think public speaking is so incredibly important, no matter what industry you're working on, where you're planning to go with it. Either way, my plan is when my son goes to college, I'm putting him in Toastmasters. I'm putting him through things too, because I think it's incredibly important for the kids to know how to present themselves. And even if it's just for a job interview, you need to go in there and kill it.
Yeah, make him do like speech and debate or model UN.
Ah, okay.
They start in junior high.
Okay.
Like best things you can do.
All right. Yeah, I'll definitely look into it. Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you so much, Dr. Megan, for being here with me today. I so appreciate you. And I think there's a lot of information there that everybody's going to be able to benefit from. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.